Our next inductee represents the media, and a great representative he is. I direct your attention now to the video screens for this background feature on our next inductee.
Dustin Brown up the middle, a breakaway for Alex Frolov. Great save, Luongo.
There's no denying the trademark commentary of BC broadcaster Jim Hughson.
What's the name of the game?
Gets Smith, Simmons out for the puck. Smith shoots, great save, Luongo.
He offers a sometimes unique but exceptional degree of integrity, knowledge, and professionalism in his play-by-play duties. Jim Hughson is from Fort St. John, BC. His early days in radio started in that community. Dress attire wasn't always big city style, but Jim's broadcasting qualities were among the most promising in the business.
When the Dawson Creek Canucks came to Fort St. John to play the Flyers on a Saturday night, our world stopped and watched. Not Hockey Night in Canada, not even Don Messer could make us stay at home. People used to joke that somebody must have bought the fire chief a ticket out of town because the North Peace Arena was jammed to the rafters, and the games, oh, the games. They were fast and physical.
Jim broadcast games across the province, including the Flyers in Fort St. John, and called the play-by-play of the dramatic World Junior Gold Medal game in Saskatoon.
No words to describe the feeling in this crowd.
And it's a 2-2 tie. Craig Johnson won the draw. John Slaney dumps the puck to the corner. Johnson centering pass. Shot up the board, can't get it out. Slaney blast one, scores!
An exciting moment, and Canada wins a gold medal with a win over Russia in '91.
Canada has struck gold.
Jim worked at various media outlets, including CKNW Radio in Vancouver and Sportsnet, before joining Hockey Night in Canada.
In farewell will miss the net. Another shot, they score. Steve Bernier.
Jim has also broadcast hundreds of NHL games, regular season, playoffs, and of course the Stanley Cup. Many games featuring the Vancouver Canucks. Houston also had the rarity of calling a goal by a goalie. Ron Hextall did the work on the ice, described by Jim Hughson.
The extra attacker. Hextall shoots the puck the length of the ice. He scores! Ron Hextall has scored into an empty net. His second career goal, his first to the playoffs, and that seals it for the Flyers.
Houston has had a varied career. He's been the voice of EA Sports' award-winning NHL series.
We're ready for the face-off. Canadians win yet another draw.
And he played an announcer in a couple of sports-related family movies. MVP.
Some Golden Nuggets and the Calgary Polar Bears. This is a Cinderella story like few we've ever seen.
And Jim also had a small role in the 2002 movie Air Bud, Seventh Inning Fetch. He has excelled at many aspects of sports broadcasting. Jim Hughson has won 5 Gemini Awards, named the best sports play-by-play or analyst in Canada. The BC Hockey Hall of Fame proudly welcomes 2012 inductee Jim Hughson. Congratulations, Jim. And to make the presentation of the BC Hockey Hall of Fame plaque, a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame and a well-known Canadian and BC hockey broadcaster, Jim Robson. Jim?
Thank you, Bernie. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been told I'm not supposed to make a speech, and I'm very disappointed because I had minutes and minutes prepared to talk about this still young man. He is not only the best in the business, but Jim Hughson is the best play-by-play hockey announcer of all time. Welcome to the BC Hockey Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jim. Coming from you, that means an awful lot to me. Jim was never a teacher in the classroom sort of way for us, but was always very generous in sharing the way he prepared for the game and his professionalism and what he did for hockey in this province and for those of us who broadcast the game is set the standard so incredibly high that we've all had to work really, really hard to keep up and to maintain it. So thank you very much, Jim. To Scott, to Bob, to Scott Niedermayer, and to Rob, congratulations. I'm truly humbled to come into a Hall of Fame on a night when you're being honored as well. To the British Columbia Hockey Hall of Fame and its directors, thank you very much for considering me for this honor. I am truly honored by it and humbled, and I would like to salute the other members of the Hockey Hall of Fame in British Columbia who are here. It's a terrific province, and as we walk through the hall upstairs where you've done such a fabulous job, it becomes obvious to me why we have a Hall of Fame and why so many of you come back. This is a great evening, a great event, and the hall is absolutely wonderful. I was blown away by it today, and I'm very, very honored to be a part of that. I guess I could talk to you about my career in movies. I mean, we saw Air Bud, and I had cornered the market on the animal sports movies there for a while. They were calling me all the time, and they always wanted me to be the announcer for the dog who played baseball and that sort of thing. And I was getting pretty big on myself, and they called me for the first MVP movie and said, we've got a monkey who plays hockey, and we'd like you to be the announcer with Dave Thomas. I thought, that's great. And I got there, and I had my own trailer and all that stuff. And so I was in Philadelphia one day, and I got a phone call in my hotel room, and the producer who made the first movie said, we're going to do MVP 2. Do you want to be in it? We'd record next Friday in Vancouver. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I won't be in town. The Canucks are on a road trip. I've got a game that night, but could you change the date? He said, no, we'll get somebody else. And that was pretty much the end of that. I could tell you stories about the NHL. I could tell you a whole bunch of hockey stories that you probably wouldn't believe and you probably wouldn't be interested in. But what I thought I might do for a second is tell you a couple of stories, some of which was alluded to in the video, that make you understand why I'm here and that some of you could appreciate because most of you grew up like I did in small-town British Columbia, in small-town Canada, and have an appreciation for the game because of that. In Fort St. John, population 5,000 or 6,000 at the time I was a kid there, there was, like a lot of communities in British Columbia, 8 months of winter and 4 months of soft ice. Hockey wasn't just a sport, it was a way of life. The North Peace Arena wasn't just a rink. All of the things that went on there were part of our community center. We spent hours and hours there skating, playing hockey, figure skating, all of those things that happen in a small community. My recollection of learning to skate wasn't even at a rink. It was on the road in front of our house. In those days, I don't remember there ever being snowplows around. There was certainly no sand and certainly no salt. I'm sure they did plow the roads, but I don't remember it. They certainly didn't in front of our house because they just mounded up the snow and everybody drove over it. And as a little kid, I remember my first skating was on the road in front of the house. And if you were ever lucky in the middle of the winter to get a thaw, a chinook for a couple of days, and then a hard freeze, it was absolutely fabulous. And then when you graduated from that, when I got a little older, you could go around 104th Avenue, up a block, and over by the reservoir, and there was a rink there, and they happened to put a light out, and you could skate there all day. And we did. We skated all day because we only played at the rink once a week, but you could skate at the outdoor rink all day until you heard the refrain from the back steps, "Supper!" And then you'd clear out, come home, and that's when I first learned about chilblains. That business of where your feet aren't quite frozen so your toes are going to fall off, but they're so cold that when you take your skates off and you start to thaw out, it's the most excruciating pain you've ever felt in your life. And you jump from one piece of furniture to the other and run around the house in absolute agony until it goes away, and then you wolf down some supper and go straight back to the rink. That's the way it worked. Our rink in the North Peace Arena wasn't just the place we played, but it was the place where I learned about hockey. It was the home of the Fort St. John Flyers, the team that played in the South Peace Hockey League. It was a spectacular league, the best league I'd ever watched and maybe have watched, because against a memory, you don't have a chance. It was in a league that featured the Spirit River Rangers, the Grand Prairie Athletics, there was the Hythe Mustangs, the Dawson Creek Canucks, and the Flyers, and there was a few other teams that would come and go. I don't remember the stats, I don't remember the scores, But I remember the teams, and I remember the players. I remember the Spirit River Rangers and the Joyelle brothers and Eddie Joyelle, who went off at one point to play in the NHL. I remember the Grand Prairie Athletics had two defensemen, Gary and Myrnie Nellis, who wore glasses like the Hanson brothers, all taped up on the corners, and we used to scream at them all night and call them the Nellis sisters. I remember the Hythe Mustangs had the oldest player in the league in Art Patterson, and if there was something going on the Oakford farm and the Oakford boys couldn't play, Hythe didn't have a team. I remember the Dawson Creek Canucks had Dave Lepke in goal. They had the smooth skating Lloyd Haddon on defense, and they had the meanest, nastiest bit of business that I've ever watched play the game in my life, a defenseman named Eddie Diachuk. He fought, he gouged, he was mean, he was hated, and he owned a pizza shop in Dawson Creek that I never in my life went into because I was afraid that one day he might be there. And then there were the Fort St. John Flyers, and we had great goaltenders like Phil Blanchette and then Jerry Dorey, and we had a defenseman, Gord Stratty, who'd come from the Detroit Red Wings and opened a tire shop and lived in our town and played. And many of the players were brought into the community and given jobs so that they could play for the Flyers, and they would help us out and they would entertain us, and they were great, great players. They were from all around the country, but they came to Fort St. John and they became our Flyers. There was Bill Ellicott at center ice. There was a raft of players, and the greatest player that I ever watched in my life, a right winger named Jimmy Anderson, who was all world to me at the time and continues to be because of the impression he made. We had season tickets on the blue line. There was only chicken wire on the end and there was no glass. So we sat with a blanket over our knees and we watched these games, and they were the best hockey games of my life, and we wouldn't miss them for the world. It was usually my mom and dad and I, and we'd sit with the blanket. It was cold because there was never any heating in the arena. It was natural ice. They scraped it, had 45-gallon drums to flood, no Zambonis in those days. Up in the corner, there was Gene Forrester, the local barber, had a brass band, and they played these marching tunes before the game and in the intermissions and got everybody revved up. And we really did think they sent the fire marshal out of town because the whole community would be there. The men would gather in the intermissions with their flasks. The women would talk figure skating under the stands. My job was to go out and start the car at the intermission because you didn't want it to freeze up. It was 35 below outside. So my dad would give me the keys, I'd go out and start the car, and I'd turn on the radio, and I'd listen to Bill Dyer, the editor of the Alaska Highway News, and Bob Harrison, who was the radio station announcer, and I'd listen to all of the celebrities they'd bring on, and they'd had the Hot Stove League, and I'd listen to that in the intermissions. And I'd find out what was going on in the game and what they thought about the game. And I'm not sure that that is really the case, but maybe that left an impression that led to what I do today. When I got a little older, I could join in scraping the ice because I could play a little bit, but I always thought I wanted to be a player, like all guys who play the game at the lower level. However, it didn't work out. Ray, you thought you had a bad year. When I played junior hockey for the Fort St. John Golden Hawks, we had a 24-game season. We were 0-22-1. It was the best damn tie in the history of hockey, and they didn't make us play the 24th game because it didn't mean very much. I realized at that time that my future might not be on the ice. I could fly. I was always the best skater on the team, but I didn't need shoulder pads, and you can take what you want from that. So I decided that broadcasting might be a way to stay in the game. And now you're thinking, the guy's just putting us to sleep talking for 10 minutes, and he's not out of the 70s. We're going to be here all night. But that's not the case because, to a large extent, it ends there. There's been a lot of work in the ensuing years, a lot of time spent, a lot learned about the game. But a lot of what came after that and has come in all of those places that I've worked, and one of my relatives suggested you look like a guy who can never keep a job. A lot of those jobs came simply out of an opportunity. Opportunity created by an unbridled passion for the game and an unequivocal love for hockey created in a small town in northern British Columbia. And it exists today. I love the game. I have passion for the game. I don't care how they play it. I don't care what evolution of the game, how it changes, which team wins. I absolutely love the game. I also love my family, and so many of them are here tonight. I'd like to acknowledge that all 5 of my sisters, Pat, Sheila, Marge, Kathy, many of their significant others who never in their life have worn socks and shoes on the 27th of July are here tonight. Some of them have even done that, discarding the flip-flops. I love you all, and I'm so happy that you're here. There's a whole whack of friends that have shown up tonight and are in the audience, and there's too many to name, so I won't, but you know who you are, and I'm very thankful that you've shown up tonight. There's another, well, I'd like to acknowledge my immediate family too. My son Matthew and my daughter Jennifer are here tonight. They weren't around for the first part of the story, but now you understand how the second part that you were around for came about. And for anyone who has lived in this game and lived their life around hockey, you understand that you don't do it and you don't have a family if there isn't someone who makes the ultimate sacrifice, and it's usually a spouse. And to my wife Denise, affectionately known in our family as the lovely Bernice, who gave up everything that she wanted to do so I could live in this fantasy world that is completely unreal for all of my life. Thank you so much. I know that I missed some anniversaries and birthdays and all of those sorts of things, and I know that there's a birthday sometime this weekend, and I promise that this year I won't forget it. One question that I'm constantly asked as I travel around in my career is, what is and what was your favorite call? To that I say, there have been many of them, but quite often the greatest moments that I've had watching the game and being a part of the game from a long ways away and watching it on television and broadcasting the games are those moments when I've had the good sense to shut up. And I believe that's what I'll do now. Thank you very much for indulging me. May there always be blue lines on your ice. Thank you.